We are live. Hey there. Hello. How's it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel on August the 12th, Friday, August the 12th, going live at 5 or a few minutes after 5, but still going live nonetheless. So, welcome to the video chat. And the way these chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour answering questions and topics of discussion related to fitness and nutrition that you submit, you, the viewers. So, as you're logging in, first off, introduce yourself. Let me know who you are and where you're tuning in from. And if you are a regular to the video chat, type the letter R into the chat window. Let me know. And if you are new, type the letter N into the video chat. If you are new to the chat, let me know. So we have Dan joining in, we have AJ, we have Sean joining in, we've got Lee joining in. A lot of these are regulars that I recognize the names from. But again, if you're new, please let me know and type the letter N. And also let me know where you're tuning in from. Always nice to know where our audience are joining from. All right, good stuff, good stuff. And I'm assuming this is coming through loud and clear, right? If it is coming through loud and clear, just type into the chat window that it is coming through loud and clear. Seems to be working good on my end, but I always want to confirm with you to make sure that it is. Because it sucks when I get on a rant and start yakking, and then lo and behold, I'm talking to dead air. All right, good stuff. Loud and clear, loud and clear. So we got James joining in. We've got good. Dan's joining in again, loud and clear. Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you much. Now, I actually have a question, a good one that was sent in from one of our regulars. This is Andrew, and he usually what he does is he always wants to make sure he gets his questions submitted. And I encourage you to do this. If you have a question that you want to make sure gets answered, send it to me in advance and say, hey, this will be a good question for your next live Q&A. And Andrew, we're friends over on Facebook. And if you're not friends with me over on Facebook, then hey, friend me up over on Facebook. Just search for Lee Hayward. My direct Facebook URL is facebook.com/Lee.Hayward. Right. So I've got the Lee Hayward name on Facebook. I know if you search for a name on Facebook, you're bound to find a ton of them. Like there's a lot of Lee Haywards on Facebook, but I have the Lee.Hayward is my Facebook URL. Friend me up over there because I'm very active over on Facebook and it's easy to chat. I actually really like Facebook as a social media platform because it's a great way to not only share content, but a great way to have a two-way conversation back and forth. So myself and Andrew, who's a regular to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel and a regular to these video chats, we're friends over on Facebook and we chat back and forth quite frequently. And he submitted a question, and this is what he does. He usually submits them in advance because he lives over in the UK, and by the time these chats air, it's getting pretty late over in the UK, so he's probably like a good lad hitting the bed at a decent hour. I hope he is anyway. All right, so this is a lengthy one, but I'm going to read it out because it's a good one. And this is what Andrew says. He says, I've got a question for your video chat if you would like to talk about this. I believe a lot of fitness influencers, in brackets, not you, yourself, you're one of the most realistic people on the internet, in brackets. But he says a lot of fitness influencers can cause body dysmorphia. He says, I've seen several people in the fitness world get to 15% body fat and then call themselves fat when 90% of the population isn't even that lean. And then it causes me and other people to feel even worse about our own bodies. I'm sure you can probably relate to this. I can certainly relate to where he's coming from. How can one person not fall into the trap of body dysmorphia given certain fitness influencers online? It would be nice for people to have abs, but for some, being that lean just isn't sustainable or realistic. I feel as if this isn't being talked about enough, and I do believe it causes so many mental and health problems for certain people. And myself and Andrew, we've chatted back and forth about this, and it's something that he has dealt with as well. He literally has went through eating disorders with related to his fitness, trying to get super lean. So it's something he certainly dealt with. He says, okay, and he's got another question that I'll address. It's a different topic altogether. So I want to stick to one question at a time here. All right, so the idea of body dysmorphia, and you're seeing fitness influencers. And what we mean by fitness influencers is, the YouTubers and the people who are posting on Instagram and social media and all the fitness gurus. And when you're following top level athletes, bodybuilders and fitness models and people like that, their standards and the level that they're at, it's a different level. And the conversations that you have are going to vary depending on who it is that you're talking to. So, like a conversation with someone who's new to the fitness game, or someone who's like overweight and out of shape and trying to get back in shape, someone along those lines, is totally different than a professional athlete who's looking to peak for a competition or take things to the next level, or someone who's a top level amateur looking to turn pro, or something along those lines, or someone who's just competitive in general. Like if you're at the competitive stage of a sport, you're beyond the beginner stage, right? You're beyond the recreational, hey, I'm doing this for fun and just to get in shape stage. So when you're talking to people who are at a higher level, the conversation is different, the standards are different, and you have to be able to realize that and differentiate from that. I mean, I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, or wrong or anything like that. It's just a different conversation and a different level. Like, let's look at it from another perspective. Let's say we're talking about business or finances. Like someone who's just out of college and looking to get their first job and looking into investing or business or career or something like that, the conversation they're going to have around finances is going to be totally different than someone who's more seasoned, a more advanced seasoned investor versus someone like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett when they're sitting around having conversations about business and investing. Like it's not right, wrong, good or bad, but it's just different levels. So can you imagine the conversations that, someone like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Richard Branson or some of these, mega billionaire success business people, the conversations they have around business and investing and stuff like that versus the average Joe Blow, right? Like it's like totally different ends of the spectrum, right? What they consider to be good or realistic or whatever is totally outside the realm of reality for most people. And the same applies when it comes to fitness. So sometimes if you're watching a professional bodybuilder on social media, like maybe you're following someone who's peaking for the Mr. Olympia competition and something like that. Like that's, in the billionaire category, of fitness. Like that's outside the realm of most people's reality. I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, or wrong, but you got to be able to differentiate it. And what's a nice thing to do is realize that the people you see online, for the most part, they're the exception and not the rule. Whereas a lot of people, you start watching YouTube videos and you start following fitness on Instagram and everything else. And you start to think like that's the normal. Like everybody who goes to the gym looks like the people on YouTube or like the people on Instagram or like whatever. And that's not the reality. Like you go to a regular gym, like you go to your local Planet Fitness or LA Fitness or local Good Life or whatever gym you go to your local gym and just look around at the average person that goes to the gym. Most people who go to the gym, if you didn't physically see them at the gym, you probably would never tell that they worked out just by looking at them. Like they're not going around with shredded six-pack abs and bulging biceps and everything else. Like the average person looks average. and they're not looking like fitness influencers. Like people at most gyms are not like repping out with 315 on the bench press, for warm-up weights or whatever. They're not slamming around weights like they do on YouTube videos and everything else. And you need to really put that into perspective, right? And another thing you got to realize too is what people show on social media is their highlight reel. Like that's not their day-to-day stuff. That's the peak, the pinnacle, the highlights. So when they show their lifts or they show their pictures or they show something, that's their personal best. And a lot of times their personal best is even doctored with all these image filters and crap that we have these days. I mean, I don't totally understand it myself, but like I know like on Instagram, for example, like if you upload a picture, then you get all these options of like, okay, throw on these different filters to make the picture look even better than it actually is. So very often the people in the pictures don't look as good as the pictures themselves. So like, what chance does the average person have? If the fitness model themselves don't even look as good as their pictures, what chance does the average person have of looking that good? Right? Like it's an illusion. It's smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of that going on, right? They're showing the highlight reel. They're showing the best of the best. Like you'll see people take 100 pictures with the perfect lighting and the perfect everything, and try to get the perfect angle and make sure they get the right pump and blah blah blah. And then they'll take that perfect picture, that 1 out of 100 picture, add filters to it and Photoshop it or whatever the hell they do with it, and then stick it up there. And then the average Joe is trying to compare themselves to that. Like it's not realistic. So you got to realize it. And the easiest way to kind of get back to reality is to get out in reality. Like go to the mall, go to the grocery store, just get out in public and look at the average people that you see there. Like they're not going around with shredded six-pack abs and consider themselves fat if they're 15% body fat, right? Like it's a different world, right? When you get out in the real world and realize that, hey, not everybody looks like social media influencers, right? So yeah, the thing that you want to do here is look at it, look at your own progress and judge your progress and by yourself. And what I mean by that is be better than you were before. As long as you're getting better than you were before, you're on the right track. You're a success. Like you can pat yourself on the back and say, I'm doing well if you're better than you were before. And that's all you really can do. I mean, even for the top level fitness influencers and top level bodybuilders and athletes and whatever, there's always going to be somebody who's better. Always. There's always going to be someone who's bigger, faster, stronger. And if there's not somebody right now, there will be in the future. There's always going to be somebody who's better. So instead of getting caught up in the whole match of trying to be the best of everybody else, focus on being the best of you, better than you were before. And that's something that you can control. Like, for example, I was actually having this conversation with a gentleman at the gym the other day who's thinking about doing his very first bodybuilding competition, but he's feeling self-conscious and kind of wondering, like, is he ready? Should he be doing it? And he follows my videos and stuff like that on the internet. And he actually came over and introduced himself to me. I've never met him in person before, but he said, hey, you're Lee, right? And I said, yeah, I'm Lee. He said, I follow you online, right? So we ended up striking up a chat over at the gym. And this guy was in phenomenal shape, like lean, ripped. I mean, like he was wearing a tank top, but I could just tell, like, crazy definition. Like this guy is in shape. And he's feeling self-conscious about himself. And he was like, once we started talking, I said, obviously you must be getting ready for our provincial bodybuilding competition, which is coming up in November. And he said, oh, no, I don't know about that. Right. He kind of brushed it off. Right. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know about that? I mean, like, dude, you look like you're a month out. Like you're in crazy shape. Right. Like you're obviously getting ready for it. And he started to brush it off. And then finally he opened up and he said, I'm thinking about doing it, but I don't think I'm good enough, right? I don't think I'm lean enough, I'm big enough, and everything else. And he's comparing himself to this vision of what he thinks he should be, when compared to the average person, he's in phenomenal shape. And so we basically had a good conversation about it. And I told him about what I'm telling you here, like, be better than you were before. And like, as long as you go out there and you give it your all, you come in and do your best, show up at your best, and know that you gave it 100%, then regardless of who else shows up, like, you can chalk that up as a victory. You can chalk that up as a success. And I would much rather compete and give it my all and lose versus compete, not give it my all and win just because the competition was so poor. Like I would rather go out there and leave it all, like whatever it was, like whether it was a race or whether it was a bodybuilding competition or a powerlifting meet or whatever. I'd rather go out there and give it my all and know that I did my absolute best. And then even if I placed dead last, but knowing that I gave it my all and did my best, I would have more satisfaction than if I did a half-ass effort and won. And that actually happened to me a few years ago. Well, it was a lot of years ago now. I remember there was the 2008 Newfoundland Provincial Bodybuilding Championships. That was the year after I won the overall championships. I won the overall in 2007. So in 2008, I kind of went into it a little bit cocky, a little bit full of myself, thinking, oh, I won it last year, I'll probably walk away and win it again this year. So I didn't train quite as hard. I didn't push it, didn't diet quite as strict, I didn't give it 100%, right? I still showed up in decent shape. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was still pleased with it, but I knew I didn't give it my all. And it showed in my conditioning. I wasn't as lean and I wasn't as defined as I was the year before. And the division that I competed in, there was it was a weak class, right? Like, to put it in perspective, I was trying to make the light heavyweight class. I didn't even make the light heavyweight class. I ended up weighing in as a heavyweight. So that just shows you how my conditioning was off. I was too heavy, too smooth. But because the other competitors in that class were novice bodybuilders, I ended up still winning the division. I won the heavyweight class, but I got my ass kicked in the overall. And I won that division, but I wasn't happy with the win because I knew I wasn't at my best. I mean, I won simply because the people I was up against were novice bodybuilders and they weren't as experienced and they didn't have the same, they weren't at the same level that I was. So I wasn't happy with that victory. Whereas the year before, when I had given it my all, I was very happy with that victory. Even if I hadn't have won, I would have been still more happy because I had given it my all and I had achieved a personal best. And I think that's what you want to focus on, is personal bests. Again, coming back to that, being better than you were before. And is focus on that, and the hell with whatever anybody else. Like, if somebody's better, so be it. If somebody's worse, so be it. Like, don't just focus on you. And I think if you focus on that, that's a great way to get over this whole body dysmorphia and comparison syndrome. You know, I mean, admire people for their accomplishments and take, you know, use it as fuel and motivation and everything else, but don't get caught up in you know, putting yourself down because somebody else is better, because there's always going to be somebody better. No matter what you do, there's going to be somebody come along who's going to be better. And like, that's just the way it is. So focus on being the best you can be and better than you were before, and then use that to monitor your progress. So that was a good question from Andrew, and hopefully you got some value from that response. All right, another one. Let's see who else we got. We got John joining in. He says, Lee, is muscle damage from time under tension rather than fast reps cause for muscle growth? Fast reps for power. Is muscle damage from time under tension rather than fast reps? It's a different form of muscle stimulation. So like if you're doing a lighter weight, slower tempo, more control, time under tension, you're still providing muscle growth. You're still breaking down the muscles, versus if you do a more powerful, explosive, faster cadence with your repetitions. It's just a different style of training. I mean, you can still make progress with both. And what type of training you do depends on, one, what it is you're training for, whether it's for bodybuilding or sports performance. And it also depends on the exercise itself. Certain exercises lend better for slower tempo, more time under tension, and certain exercises lend better for faster, more explosive movements. And then there's areas in between. Like, it really depends. And this is something that as you develop more sensory acuity with your body, as you develop more experience, you'll kind of find this out for yourself. But I'll just kind of give you some general guidelines. Isolation exercises tend to work better with time under tension and focusing on form and quality over simply moving heavy weight. Whereas sometimes the bigger, more power exercises, you can be faster and more explosive and still get good results with those. So prime example, look at an Olympic weightlifter who's doing a clean and jerk or a snatch or something along those lines. Like, that is pure fast explosive. Like, there's no way to get that weight up without being fast and explosive. And they train to be fast and explosive. So that is one end of the spectrum. Then you look at someone who's doing concentration curls for their biceps. Like, if you do it fast and explosive, you're not getting the same level of muscular stimulation. And a lot of times the momentum will take over and you won't get the quality of muscle contraction. So a lot of times the exercise itself will determine what type of tempo you use. So again, isolation moves, generally slower, more controlled, feeling the muscle works versus simply trying to move weight. And then the bigger, more powerful exercises, you can be a bit more faster and explosive and still reap the benefits. So that's kind of, it's a very abbreviated answer, because I mean, we could go on and break this down into multiple layers, but that's kind of like the general consensus here, right? It's not right, wrong, good or bad. It's just different situations for different exercises and different strategies. We got Sean joining in. We got Dan joining in. James is joining in. We have Shellery, I think it is. Lima Charlie. Okay. We've got Sean saying, if you work as a plumber and come home so tired, you're not motivated to work out. It sucks, but you want to get back on track. What would you do? Okay. Let's just swap out plumber for physical labor work, because this applies to anybody who does a physically demanding job, whether it's plumbing, carpentry, auto mechanics, landscaping, whatever. So, you're working physical labor and you're exhausted. You got a couple options. One, which would be ideal in those situations, is if you could get your workouts done early in the day, right? Get the workout done, over with. And then, regardless of how tired you are from your job afterwards, that's not going to hinder the workout, because the workout's done, it's in the bank, boom, it's out of the way. That applies for a lot of situations, regardless of your career. Even if you have a desk job, that's still a very powerful strategy to get the workout done first thing in the morning, so that it's out of the way, it's crossed off the list. You can't get distracted. You can't skip out on it later in the day because of busyness or tiredness or whatever. It's done. And I find people who work out first thing in the morning tend to be more consistent than those who work out later in the day. Generally. Now, there's exceptions to everything, right? I know some people who work out later in the day and they're spot on consistent, but generally speaking, you'll be more consistent if you can get it done first thing in the morning. However, I know that's not always practical, especially if you're doing, like, you start work early in the morning, like you start work at sunrise. Like, you're not going to be getting up in the middle of the night to go to the gym to work out, right? So obviously you'd probably be doing your workouts later in the day. In those situations, it can be challenging. I'm not going to lie. It's challenging. Like, when I was younger, I used to do physical labor work, as a teenager and stuff. In my early days, I did some physical, work, did construction, odd jobs and stuff like that. And yeah, it definitely takes the good at you, and it takes a lot of effort and energy from your training. So sometimes, if you're really exhausted, you had a hard day of work, maybe you can't push it so hard with the weight training, right? So there's going to be those days. Sometimes you got to find that compromise. Like, if you're doing a lot of physical work and you're on your feet all the time, maybe you're going to compromise in other areas. Like, maybe you'll scale back in some of the cardio and then just prioritize the weight training. Like, I know that with a lot of people, because they're burning a lot of calories just from being on their feet and all day long. So if your main goal is building muscle, then you probably don't want to be spending your gym time just doing extra calorie burning exercises. And you want to focus more on strength specific exercises. Another thing you can look at is, with your job, what areas are getting a lot of work? And then you probably prioritize areas with your workouts that are not getting as much work. For example, like, let's just say a mechanic or a carpenter or someone, they're doing a lot of work with their hands. Well, you're probably not going to go to the gym and train forearms, right? Because your forearms and your hands and everything else are probably getting a lot of work just from your job. So you're going to go in there and you're going to focus on other areas that you're not hitting through your physical labor work. So you can be a bit more selective with your exercises and try and be fine tune it, if you will, to get the most bang for your buck from those workouts. All right. And other times you may actually have to space it out more. Like, in certain situations, you might not be able to stick to a frequent workout where you're doing like day after day after day. You might have to space it out, like every other day or maybe 3 days a week, or hit the gym on the weekends on your off days to kind of make up for it. So there's no real right or wrong answer for this, but you got to factor that in, because if you're doing a lot of physical labor work, especially in the summertime with a lot of these physical labor jobs, especially if it's outdoor work, you're starting early, you're working late, like the days are longer, the work hours are longer. That's going to have an impact on your physical training, when it comes to the gym workouts. So you're going to have to compromise, because when you look at the bigger picture, it's not like you've got endless recovery abilities. It's not like I got 100% recovery to handle my physical labor work, and I got 100% recovery to handle my gym workouts, and I got 100% recovery for sports and activities and hobbies. No, you got 100% total, and you got to divvy that up according to everything that you're doing. And you got to be more selective and prioritize it better. So, like I say, I wish I could give a more concrete, specific, hey, do this answer, but it's really an individual thing. but it's something that you got to look at the bigger picture and adjust it accordingly, and maybe err on the side of lower volume, right? Like scale back on the volume of sets, scale back on the volume of exercises, and just sometimes settle on being good enough and good enough consistently. Like I would much rather you do that. I'd much rather you go in and do like a little half hour or maybe 45-minute workout than thinking, hey, I got to go in there and blast out a 2-hour gym session. Right? Maybe the 2-hour gym session is way too much and overkill, but you could go in there and do a little half hour or 45-minute session. So sometimes you might just be able to do the same type of stuff, just scale back the volume to accommodate the recovery, or the lack thereof, I should say. All right, moving on. What else we got there? We got Neil joining in, complimenting on my haircut. I do this myself, and it ain't too fancy. I've been cutting my own hair since I was a teenager, right? So imagine all the money I've saved over the years cutting my own hair, right? I mean, my goodness, I have to rack up a good chunk of change. But anyway, yes, I did buzz off my hair, and I enjoy having a nice buzzed off hair. I like it when I can get out of bed and there's no such thing as messing up this hair. All right. Anyway, he's got a question. He says, I notice that when I do front squats, my knees go slightly past my toes. They say it's bad for your knees to go in front of your toes, blah, blah, blah. It's a crock of shit. Don't get too hung up over the knees and the toes. Like, you look at anybody who's squatting, like, look at the king of squats, Tom Platz from back in the day. You watch his videos on squatting, his knees went over his toes. And he built the best legs in bodybuilding because of it. You look at Olympic weightlifters when they're squatting, more often than not, their knees are going over their toes. Like, it's not the end of the world if your knees go over your toes. It's basically a mobility and leverage issue. Like, some people, due to their leverage and their mechanics and their mobility, they may be able to squat and keep their shins more upright, and their knees don't go over their toes. Other people, their knees probably go over their toes. I'm kind of in the situation where my knees just slightly go past my toes. I mean, it's not crazy huge, but they do go past my toes when I do a full squat. And it's not a big deal. Focus on how does it feel? Like, if you can squat and it feels comfortable, you don't have any knee pain or hip pain or ankle pain or any mobility issues, and you can do the movement comfortably, it's okay, right? Listen to your body. Your body will tell you if something doesn't feel right. You'll get those aches and pains and warning signs, right? Like, that's your body's check engine light. When something hurts or doesn't feel good, that's your warning sign. But if you can do the movement and you can do it with good form and it feels good, that's fine, right? It's not a big deal if your knees go over your toes. And in fact, it'd be a good idea too to videotape yourself doing some of these exercises. Like, videotape yourself front squatting or back squatting and whatever, all the other different exercises. And you can kind of self coach yourself that way and just see, and even for that matter, you can kind of compare your technique to somebody else's technique. Like, find a more advanced somebody on YouTube or whatever and see, okay, this is, the like, find a front squat tutorial, if you will, like how to do a front squat, and you watch that one and then compare your video to that one and see, like, how does it look, right? Are you kind of on par with what the other person is doing? And if you are, then hey, you're probably good enough. Now, realize that when everybody's form is going to vary slightly just due to body position and mechanics. Like, if you got longer legs, longer torso, whatever, your form may look different than somebody else. But you want to look for the key things, and as long as it's close enough, right, within your body mechanics, and it feels good, then you should be fine. Like, that's one of these things. It's kind of like a little bit of a pet peeve of mine when people put out these general one size fits all rules, saying like, oh, your knees should never go over your toes. Well, that might be good for one person, but what if somebody else is way taller and they got longer limbs, and when they do a full squat, just because they got longer limbs, their knees go over their toes? Like, it's a different, it's not always like a one size fits all cookie cutter solution, right? It's going to vary depending on the situation and your own body makeup. So don't get too hung up over that. We've got Ange joining in, says, I'm live here today. Yes, you are indeed. And so am I. Thanks for answering my question. I have another question for you. I feel drained a lot, and I believe my push-pull legs routine could be the cause. Should I swap the routine? Not necessarily. If you're feeling that you're pushing the limits, you're overreaching, pushing the overtraining, not getting adequate recovery, you could still do a push pull legs routine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just scale back the volume, right? You could scale back, like do fewer sets or fewer exercises of what you're currently doing, or maybe even just kind of do the same thing but do it at a lower intensity, like purposely go through a deload phase. And this is something I should address more, because it's a lot of people have this mentality thinking that you got to go in there and you got to go hard every time. Like you got to push yourself to failure and beyond, right? You go hard, go heavy, or go home. And that is really like this old school macho mentality. And I know it sounds cool and it looks cool. And when you see somebody going in there and they're training hard and they're hitting personal bests and all that, it looks cool and it makes awesome YouTube videos and blah, blah, blah. And, that's what people bragging rights and all that kind of crap. But those are the exception. They're not the rule. Like that's not every workout's not going to be a personal record workout. Every workout's not going to be, this super high intensity balls to the wall training session. There's going to be a lot of subpar workouts in there. There's going to be a lot of active recovery sessions and deload and lower intensity work. And this is something we're seeing more of in sports and athletics in general. And I think it should carry over to weight training as well. And for those of you who've been following me for a while, like I've really gotten into cycling over the last couple of years. Like I've always been a bike rider since I was a kid. Like I started riding a bike when I was a kid and I never stopped. But over the last few years, I've really gotten more serious into it, and actually started, diving into the science behind cycling training and competing, and actually, did some sportives, and I did a race earlier this year. And so I've really dove into it, started studying more about that area of sports training. And one of the common things you see in endurance trainings, cycling specific, but it applies to other endurance sports as well, is the idea of polarized training. And what they mean by polarized training is very easy workouts and then very hard workouts. And the majority of your workouts should actually be easy workouts. So like you're not going out there and smashing the pedals and training at lung bursting intensity and busting your ass every ride. Like most of your rides or most of your training should be done at lower intensity, building the base. And think of it like building a pyramid. Like we just can't, okay, we got the base and then you got the peak, right? And the peak is the intensity, right? So in order to build more intensity, you got to build a bigger base. Because if you just keep trying to build it up, 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 like it's not very solid, right? You need to have a big base. And the big base is laid through lower intensity base building training. So the idea with endurance training is you want to do a lot of lower intensity training, which will build a bigger base, and then it'll actually help you when it comes to those higher intensity sessions. And the general rule of thumb for a lot of, for polarized training is 80% of your workouts should be like low to moderate intensity, and only 20% are those ball busting hardcore sessions. And a lot of people try to have ball busting hardcore sessions all the time. And the problem with that is it leads to burnout, leads to overtraining, it leads to injury, and leads to all kinds of setbacks because your body can't recover from those ball busting sessions. So with your workouts, it applies, weight training workouts. I mean, the same thing applies. You can't always be going in there and expecting to be hitting PRs every workout, right? Adding weight and adding reps and going hardcore and training to failure and beyond day after day after day. Like you just physically can't handle it. There's going to be days in there where you stop with reps in reserve, right? You go through and have an easy workout. Like that's okay. You don't feel guilty by having easy workouts. They're essential to have those easy workouts to build a bigger base, build a bigger work capacity and just general overall fitness so that you can hit those peak workouts from time to time. And I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to go on about this, how you can structure it. Like a lot of training programs do different types of periodization where they start off with lower intensity and then they build up to a peak and whatever. I mean, there's a gazillion ways of going about it. But bottom line, for general fitness, I would recommend incorporating more lower intensity training into your routine. And anytime you start to feel like you are now, that you're feeling drained, you're feeling exhausted, you're not recovering, this is your cue to deload, like purposely for the next couple of weeks. Like go through the motions, easier workouts, cut back the volume, cut back the intensity, probably even choose easier exercise variations, right? Instead of barbell bench presses, do the hammer strength chest press machine, right? Instead of barbell squats, go over and do the leg press. Like, do easier exercise variations, lighter weights, and just kind of give your body a chance to still be active, but not burning yourself out. So active recovery training, deload training, if you will. And after a week or two of that, you should start feeling better. Like, your energy levels will start to bounce up and you'll start to feel good. And then as you're feeling good, then you can push yourself harder again. But you can't go pushing yourself harder all the time, because you'll get to where you are now, where you're feeling drained and depleted and like you don't even want to work out anymore. Like, that's the symptoms of overtraining. So, like I say, you could have a structured program in place, or you can kind of do it more intuitively. And the stage I'm at now, I like to do it intuitively, because like I don't have a strict schedule where I got to work out X number of days per week or whatever. I kind of like play it by ear. And the reason I do that is because I've got a life outside of fitness, right? I got a family, I got a career, I got other things on the go. So I can't work out every day, and if you're trying to do training according to the weather, I mean, hey, it might be a scheduled high intensity day on the bike and it's pouring down rain, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something else instead. Like, I'm very flexible with my training, right? I don't have it set in stone where I got to do it on this day or that day or whatever. I play it by ear, but I follow that concept of polarized training, where a lot of my workouts are actually easy workouts. And then every now and then, when I'm feeling good and I want to push the limits, then I will do those high intensity workouts. And that's where I'll try for a personal best and a new PR, whether it's new PR with weight training or new PR with cycling or whatever. But that's not every day, right? Those are the exceptions, not the rule, right? Most of the workouts should be low to moderate intensity and kind of base building, going through the motions. So I think if you incorporate more of that, you'll actually enjoy the process more and make better gains over the long term. Moving on. Kevin is asking, what percentage of your meals are carbs? I don't know. I really don't. It depends. It depends on depends on my activity for that day. But general rule of thumb, right? To kind of just give you an answer here. When I'm setting up a meal plan for somebody, I usually recommend a balanced ratio of protein, carbs, and fat. That's my general rule of thumb. Like 1/3 of your calories from protein, 1/3 of your calories from carbs, and 1/3 of your calories from fat. Now, once we have that base, then we can manipulate it based on your activity levels, how your body responds, and what it is you're training for. So if somebody's training for fat loss, that 1/3 ratio, 1/3 protein, 1/3 carbs, 1/3 fat, works really darn well. Because when you eat in balance and you're not neglecting food groups and you're not creating this big disturbance in your nutritional profile, your body functions much better. Because one thing you'll see, like a lot of people think, well, I'm trying to lose fat, so I got to cut out all my carbs, right? Like that's the biggest crock of shit that's out there, right? This whole low carb thing. Because what happens when you cut out your carbs? You feel like crap, right? Your energy plummets. You feel weak, depleted, deflated. Because when you deplete your carbohydrates, you lose all your glycogen. You deplete your glycogen from your muscles. For every gram of glycogen in your muscles, your body retains 3 to 4 grams of water. So you'll lose all that glycogen, you lose all that water, and the scale just drops. So that's why people go on a keto diet or any variation of low carb diet, and they're like, oh my God, I lost 10 pounds in a week. Woohoo! You just lost 10 pounds of water because you depleted yourself. Now, granted, if you're in a calorie deficit, some of that is going to be body fat from the calorie deficit, but the majority of the weight is just water weight. And then with all that water and glycogen out of your muscles, now you feel flat and depleted. Like you go to train and there's nothing there. You're not getting a pump. You're not getting any energy. You're trying to train, you're trying to push weight, and you're running on empty, right? It's what it's like. You're trying to run on empty. And that's no fun. Like you're feeling depleted. You're probably losing muscle because you don't have the energy there to train hard. And yeah, okay, you may lose weight from it, but it's not quality weight. It's not losing, it's not a body recomposition. It's just a depletion, starve yourself type of approach. Whereas if you have a well-balanced approach, right? Getting adequate protein to provide the nutrients that your body needs for muscle growth and repair. Adequate carbohydrates, so you actually have some energy to run on. Like carbs are your high octane fuel source. That's what fuels your workouts. That's what fuels a high intensity exercise. And then fats, which is your low octane fuel for your slow burning energy. And it also provides a lot of nutrients, the essential fatty acids and joint lubrication and stuff that your body needs for hormones and brain health and all this good stuff. I mean, you need fat, right? You need protein, you need carbs, and you need fat. So when you eat all that stuff in balance and proportion, the body just works well. Like you don't go through the mood swings and the energy fluctuations, and you don't feel flat and depleted. You actually feel solid and stable, and you feel good. And then we can manipulate that based on what it is you're training for and based on how your body responds. So for some people, if you're really active and you're doing a lot of high intensity training, maybe you need more carbohydrates to provide more of that high octane fuel. So in my case, if I'm doing a big day on the bike, I'm eating more carbs, right? I'm eating a lot more carbs because I'm burning a lot more and I need that extra energy. I need that extra calories in my system. And a lot of it's going to come from extra carbs. If it's an easy day or an active recovery day and I'm not pushing myself so hard, I'm not going to eat as much. So I'm probably going to keep that 1/3 ratio, protein, carbs, and fat. If somebody is more sensitive to foods, like let's just say somebody bloats really easy from carbohydrates, or they got a sensitive stomach, and that maybe they'll want to eat slightly lower carbohydrates and a little bit more fat to kind of keep things in balance. But I would never recommend going to the extremes where you cut out the food groups. Like, oh, I'm going cutting out carbs. Like I'm going carnivore, I'm going keto, and I'm going this, or I'm going plant-based. I'm cutting out all animal protein or any of that shit. Like when you cut out food groups, things go wrong, right? It very rarely works out long term, right? It might work in the short term. And this is where it's confusing because you'll see someone who say, like, I went on keto for 3 months and I lost a ton of weight. Yeah, okay, you did it for 3 months. Can you do it for 3 years? Can you do it for the next 10 years? Can you do it for the next 20 years? Like, look at it long term. Like, if you can't do it long term, it's not sustainable. Like, just because you suffered out for a few weeks or a few months, like big deal. Like if you can't sustain it as a lifestyle, the results are only temporary. So whatever eating plan you follow, think of it from that lens. Like, is this something you enjoy? And is this something you can do for the rest of your life? And if it's not, then it ain't sustainable, right? So you got to look at it from that point of view. And that's why so many people yo-yo diet. Like they'll go on some crazy extreme program, and yeah, they might see some short-term results because it's so crazy and extreme. But then after a few weeks or a few months, they run out of willpower and they can't do it anymore. And they just they burn themselves out. And then they go back to their old eating habits, go back to their old physical conditioning, whether it's get fat, whatever, fat and out of shape. And then they yo-yo diet, back to square one all over again. So like, what's the point of starving yourself and losing a bit of weight in the short term only to rebound and gain it all back in the long term? Like you need to think like slow and steady and sustainable. It's a different mindset. And I mean, I'd much rather you lose weight slowly, but the weight you lose is the weight you keep off, or you gain muscle slowly, where the muscle you gain is muscle you keep, versus these extreme approaches where, you're going to these crazy extremes or cutting out food groups and all that kind of crap. So anyway, long-winded answer to what percentage of my meals are carbs. Where are we to? Lee is asking if frozen vegetables in a blender, does it still have the same nutritional benefits as fresh vegetables? I'm trying different ways to add more veg to my daily intake. Yes, in some cases, frozen vegetables may actually be more nutritionally better than fresh in some cases, depending on where you live and depending on the vegetable availability and everything else. Because the thing with frozen vegetables and frozen fruits, same thing applies, is it's picked and frozen right away. So it maintains the nutritional value that it had when it was frozen. Whereas the fresh stuff is packaged up and then shipped to the store, and then it's sitting on the shelf. Well, first it's sitting in the trucks, and then however long it takes to get transported to your local grocery store, and then it's sitting on the shelf, and then it's slowly rotting away. So, I mean, by the time you get it, especially for us where we live in Newfoundland, like, we're an island out in the North Atlantic in the north. So everything gets imported in, and it's not always the freshest, right? Like, unfortunately, I was at the grocery store last night, and it was disgusting because half the vegetables were rotten on the shelf. Like, they didn't even buy them. right? So like if you're in those situations where the stuff is like half rotten on the shelf, then the fresh is not the better option. You're better off getting frozen, because at least that was frozen and the nutritional value has been sustained at the time it was frozen. So in some cases, it's actually better to get frozen than it is to get fresh. Another plus is a lot of times it's actually cheaper, right? I mean, I know that varies depending on where you live and everything else, but here where I live, a lot of times we can get frozen vegetables for a fraction of the price that you would get the fresh. Like I can buy a big bag of uh, frozen vegetables or frozen fruit cheaper than I can buy the fresh options. So yeah, the frozen still has the same nutritional profile. And if you blend it up, that's fine as well. Like blending is not going to hurt it, right? I mean, if you eat it, your teeth are blending it up. So it's no different, right? You're still getting the same benefits. What else we got there? Is a bench press once a week enough for chest? Squats once a week enough for legs? It depends. I mean, a lot of people have made gains doing, once a week. I mean, you can make progress with that. I personally would want to do more than just a bench press once a week for the chest and a squat once a week for the legs. But if you're stuck and that's all you can do, I mean, you could still make it work. But I think you could make it a lot more optimal, put it that way, right? That's from YT. I mean, if you got specific questions about your workouts, like feel free to email me. I got my contact information below, and we could chat about your training. And, see if we can come up with an action plan that's optimal for you in your situation. But to be brutally honest with your question, no, I don't think it's optimal. I mean, it's better than nothing. Something's always better than nothing, but I think it could certainly be a lot better. I wouldn't recommend somebody to just do bench once a week and squat once a week and call that a workout routine. What else we got there? JE's joining in. It says, do you got any tips on how to use bodybuilding to speed up the weight loss process? Yeah, bodybuilders are the most successful fat loss. Bodybuilders have the greatest rate of fat loss success of all dieters, right? So like you look at a competitive bodybuilder, they get down to single digit body fat. Like very few dieters in any other area get to single digit body fat. So bodybuilding is amazing for fat loss. And the reason for that is because one, you're building lean muscle, and muscle burns calories 24/7. So when you exercise, you burn a lot of calories, depending on the type of exercise. But when you got more muscle, you're always burning more calories. It's your body's revving at a higher metabolism. So it's burning more calories 24/7. So the more muscle you got on the frame, the more calories you're going to burn, and that's going to help to aid with fat loss. So yes, absolutely. You can use bodybuilding to help speed up the fat loss process. If you want specific help on that, like how to lay out an action plan, again, reach out to me. Right? I got my contact information below. We can either email back and forth, or we can even schedule in for a strategy session call, and we can lay out an action plan for you on how you can actually utilize this to achieve your fat loss goals. And I like to use the word fat loss versus weight loss, right? Like I know a lot of people just throw it out, hey, I want to lose weight, but do you really want to lose weight? No, you want to lose fat and either maintain or build muscle in the process. Like most guys, they want to build muscle and lose fat. A lot of women that I talk to, it's just, I want to lose weight, right? Oh, I don't want to be too big. I don't want to be too bulky. I just want to lose weight, right? I just want to be skinny. So they're not so concerned with the muscle. In not all cases, but in some. But generally, we don't want to lose muscle. Like if you went on a diet and you lost 10 pounds, but you lost 10 pounds of muscle, that is not a healthy weight loss. Like that's actually like kicking yourself in the nuts. Like that's setting you back, not putting you ahead. Because if you lose muscle when you lose weight, that actually slows your metabolism and then makes it easier to regain that weight, and it makes it harder to burn more calories in the future. Like you're killing yourself in the process. Whereas if you build muscle and lose fat, now you're improving your body composition, and you can be leaner and burn more calories as well. And very often what happens when most people lose weight is it's a combination of building muscle and losing fat. But generally, for most people, the rate of fat loss is greater than the rate of muscle gain. So just to kind of throw some numbers out there. Let's say someone loses, they go on a really solid program. Like some of my coaching students, for example, I had uh, one guy, for example, Craig War. All right, I coached him last year, and last year he lost, I think it was 45 pounds. 45 pounds on the scale, but he built muscle and gained strength in the process. So in reality, he probably lost 50 or more pounds of body fat while simultaneously putting on 5 or more pounds of muscle in the process. So he increased his lean mass while losing body fat. So the weight on the scale doesn't always, show the true body composition changes, but that's what we want. We want to see your strength and energy improve while your body fat drops. And in doing so, very often you will lose weight, but it's not just weight loss, it's a body recomposition. And when you focus on that, that's where you can get sustainable and healthier results versus simply just losing weight at all costs. Because if you're losing muscle at the same rate you're losing body fat, then you're actually setting yourself back in the long run. So that's where the bodybuilding can help with the weight loss, because we're building muscle while losing body fat. John is asking, do I have any lagging body parts and how do I bring them up? I've mentioned this actually last show. I was talking about this one, but for me, genetically, my arms and shoulders are my weakest body parts. They've always been the lagging areas. My chest, back, and legs have naturally been my stronger body parts. So those are areas that have grown easier for me. Arms and shoulders have always been my lagging body parts. And I've utilized a lot of different strategies. I mean, they're still lagging body parts. They've improved, but they're still lagging body parts for me. But the best way that I found to bring up lagging body parts is to prioritize them by literally doubling up on the volume of your lagging body parts while putting your stronger body parts on a maintenance program. So to kind of put it in perspective, one of the most effective programs that I utilize, and I actually wrote a book on it. It's called Blast Your Biceps, which is available over on blastyourbiceps.com if you want to go check it out. It's a digital ebook. But the premise and the main concept behind that was I did 2 workouts per week for arms, and then my stronger body parts, I did 1 workout per week for those. So I doubled up on the volume of the stubborn body parts, the lagging body parts, and I put the stronger body parts on a maintenance program. And that's what you want to do, because again, you can't focus on everything equally, right? You only have limited recovery capabilities. It's not like you got 100% recovery for everything. You got 100% total. How do you divvy that up? So I wanted to maximize my recovery for my stubborn areas and just kind of put the stronger areas on maintenance. So for legs, chest, back, they went on a very basic maintenance program, just to kind of keep them where they're at. And then for my arms and shoulders, I put that on a specialization program. And I actually utilized 2 different styles of training. One was a higher volume, higher rep workout, and one was a lower volume, lower rep workout. And the reason for that is because I wanted to work some of the slow twitch muscle fibers and then the fast twitch muscle fibers. So you're getting full development and really maximizing the efficiency and the growth that you get from those specialization workouts. And then again, all that's outlined in the Blast Your Biceps program. So if you want, you can head on over to blastyourbiceps.com and get a copy of that for yourself. And it outlines the whole thing step by step. It even outlines the workouts, everything, and the whole theory behind it. And you could utilize that philosophy to any stubborn body parts. Like if your legs are stubborn, like you could reverse it and prioritize leg training, and then put the other body parts on maintenance. Or if your chest is a weak area, you could prioritize chest and put your other body parts on maintenance. But that's the general rule of thumb, is to specialize in the weaker areas and then maintenance for the stronger areas. Ron's joining in, says, man, I love your channel. I'm a beginner. I have 25-pound dumbbells. Do you have any recommendations for arm and chest workouts? Yep. First off, you got 25-pound dumbbells. That's a great start, but honestly, you're going to need more. Like, you're kind of limited, right? You that's like saying, hey, I want to build a house. I got a hammer. Okay, it's good. You're definitely going to need a hammer if you want to build a house, but you're going to need a few more tools along with it. So, whether you join a gym, which would be the best option, like, I'm not going to lie, joining a gym, you can't beat it. It's better than a home gym because you got top quality equipment. You got all the variety you're going to need. Plus, you got a good atmosphere for training in. But if you want to get started at home, you can certainly do so, but you're going to need some more than just the 25-pound dumbbells. One thing that would definitely be an easy upgrade is a set of resistance bands, adjustable tension resistance bands. That would be an easy upgrade. And I've got videos up on the YouTube channel now showing workouts that you can do using resistance bands and using dumbbells. Just go to the main channel and then open up the playlist tabs. There's a section there, one that covers dumbbell workouts for all the major muscle groups. But also, if you just do a search for like Lee Hayward home workouts, you should see some. And if you even do a search for like Lee Hayward resistance band workouts, you'll see some examples there as well, where I take you through a bunch of different exercises that you can do at home using dumbbells and resistance bands and basically minimal equipment. Because that stuff, it's nice to have those options available, right? Especially like over the past couple of years, when we went into pandemic mode and the world shut down and nobody could go to the gym. Like a lot of people had to make do with minimal equipment. So I actually made a whole bunch of videos during that time, which, you could still make progress. But the best situation, if you want to kind of stack the deck in your favor and maximize your progress, join a gym, right? I mean, like most bodybuilders and athletes and people who are in shape, they work out in a well-equipped gym, right? These, you need the tools available if you want to get the results. So that's what I would definitely recommend. It would be a worthwhile investment, probably the best recommendation I could give you. All right, what else we got there? Envision Holdings. Lee, how do you stop eating once you've reached your calorie total for the day? If your appetite is still strong, what do you do and what's your mindset? Thanks. That's from Alan. Higher volume food is the key here. And the thing is, when you're eating, it's not, how can I, you're eating for taste, you're eating for the sensations of your body. It's not always calories. Like if you put very calorie dense foods, like I put a bag of potato chips in front of you. It's going to be hard to eat until you're full with potato chips because one, it's a processed food. It's very easy to eat and it's very calorie dense, right? I mean, it's thin, it's crunchy, it's salty, it's flavored. I mean, it's just designed to just pop one after the other. Like the commercial said for the potato chips, I bet you just can't eat one. And that's true. Like potato chips and processed foods are designed in such a way that they're designed for consumption, right? The more you eat, the more money they make. And it's just a ever expanding spiral, right? It just keeps going. So you need to focus on high volume, natural, unprocessed foods that are going to naturally satiate your appetite. And I'll give you an example. Like the potato chip example is one. Like you pop open a bag of potato chips, like you could polish off a whole bag of potato chips and still be hungry, even though you just consumed like a gazillion calories, depending on how big the bag was and how much crap was on the chips. I mean, I don't know what the exact calorie count in a bag of chips, but it's a lot, right? I mean, like you could consume a lot of calories in a big bag of potato chips. Think of a bag of apples. Like, could you go to the grocery store and buy a bag of apples and eat the whole bag? Like, I don't know, like a 2 or 3 pound bag of apples. No, like you'd eat one apple, you'd eat 2 apples, you might eat 3 apples, and then you're like, man, I'm sick of apples. I don't want to eat these anymore. Like, boy, like you get full because it's a natural unprocessed food. It's high in volume and it's low in calories, and you just get full of it. Whereas potato chips aren't like that. Like you can just eat and eat and eat. Right? They're designed for consumption. Whereas natural unprocessed foods, they've got built-in safety. So it's hard to overeat on natural unprocessed foods. Think of like if I gave you a big bag of garden salad, like can you just endlessly eat salad? Like you just eat and you go back for bowl after bowl after bowl. I'm like, man, I can't stop eating salad. I just keep eating it over and over and over again. Probably not. Like you eat 1 or 2 bowls of salad and you're like, man, I don't want to eat any more salad. I'm full. Right? Same with like chicken breasts. Can you just sit down and endlessly eat chicken breasts? Like, again, probably not. Like you eat 1, 2, maybe 3 chicken breasts and you're like, man, I don't want to eat any more chicken. Right? So natural unprocessed foods is the secret. And that's stuff that's filling and satiating at the same time. Another good one is really high volume foods like air pop popcorn. This is my secret for like late night snacking, if you will. right? Like if I want to have a movie night snack, I get a big bowl of air pop popcorn. I got an air popper and I pop my own, and then I get some, I might throw on a little bit of popcorn seasoning to give it a bit of flavor. But I'll have that, and I'll have some sparkling water along with it, 0 calorie sparkling water. And I mean, I got myself a great big bowl of air pop popcorn, bottle of sparkling water. So, I mean, it feels like I'm having my movie night cheat, and it's like 200 calories, right? So instead of having a bag of potato chips and soda pop, which could end up being 1,000+ calories, I have my air pop popcorn and a sparkling water, and it's 200 calories. But it's the same volume and it's the same eating satiation, same eating satisfaction. So you got to look for ways to fill up on the high volume natural foods and avoiding the processed foods, because that's the killer. It's not so much the calories, it's tricking your body into thinking you're eating more than you really are. And that's where the processed foods is they trick your body into eating way more than you need and not feeling satiated from them. Like if you're eating candy bars and potato chips and ice cream and soda pop and all that kind of stuff, like you can slam back hundreds and or thousands of calories and not feel full from it. Whereas if you're eating fruits and vegetables and lean protein and stuff like that in its natural unprocessed form, it's very hard to overeat. You just physically get full, and you get to the point where you don't want to eat anymore, right? So that's the secret, right? And that's what I focus on teaching people in the whole Muscle After 40 blueprint, is we focus on that. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying you can never eat the junk food. Like you can still make it work in moderation, like if you really got a hankering or a craving for something, but we got strategies for how to manage that. What else we got there? Jeff is joining in, and he's saying, I'm just getting started into strength, and my upper body lifts are comparatively much stronger than my squat and deadlift. Would you recommend pausing my upper body progression until the lower body catches up? No, you're just getting started. Just work out. Like don't overthink it. Just work out. Just be consistent with all your muscle groups. Train everything in balance and proportion, and do so for at least a year. Right? Get a year of solid, well-balanced training under your belt. And then after a year, you can reevaluate and decide. Because chances are it could be just some technique issues or whatever, like learning how the mechanics of the lift and stuff. Like the squat and the deadlift are very technical lifts, right? Like to really master that, and improving your technique could drastically improve your strength in those areas. So I wouldn't get into specialization when you're just getting started, right? That's a mistake. Like specialization is an advanced phase. Like that's what you do after you've got, you're past the beginner phase, then you get into specialization. You're just getting started. Just focus on being consistent. Don't try and prioritize anything. Just like hit all your major muscle groups equally in balance and proportion. I mean, I usually recommend like 3 total body workouts a week, but try and work everything equally. So like if you do a chest press, you want to do a back row. If you do a shoulder press, you want to do a lat pull down. So like horizontal press, horizontal pull, overhead press, overhead pull, leg extension, leg curl, bicep curl, tricep extension, like chest fly, reverse fly. Like I always think of balance and proportion, working agonist and antagonist muscle groups. So hitting everything equally so that the body builds up in balance and proportion all over. Once you've been doing that for at least a year, and then you say, okay, certain areas are responding better than others, then we can start to prioritize it. But don't do it until you've got a year of solid, consistent workouts under your belt. Arnold's got a question saying, I feel very often foggy in my head. Has it got to do with my training? I try to lift heavy, 5 reps, sometimes 8 reps, with the last rep being very heavy. Foggy in the head. If this is just something that's recent, I mean, it could be that you're just overtraining and pushing yourself too hard. And we kind of addressed this a few questions earlier, where you sometimes just need to back off the intensity and kind of go through an active recovery deload phase to give your body a break, which may be the case. But if this is something that's been going on for a while, and I don't know your definition of foggy in the head, but if in doubt, get it checked out. Like if you're feeling like you don't feel balanced, or you don't feel mental clarity, or like you got some concerns, like something just doesn't feel right, don't put it off. right? I would recommend getting it looked into just to make sure that there's no underlining something going on that you're ignoring. Like anytime you have any health issues, like it's early diagnosis is usually the key to getting it corrected. Putting it off, brushing it under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist and just hoping it's going to somehow go away on its own, which is the typical man's solution to healthcare, right? Oh, something doesn't feel right. I'll forget it. It'll get better. I'll put it off, right? Like, no, that's not the way to go, right? I've unfortunately, I've known family members who have died, literally died because they've done that. Like, I mean, I don't want to go into detail about it, but like I've had relatives, for example. Oh, I got this lump in my stomach, but it's no big deal. It'll go away on its own, right? And keeps forgetting, and oh, it'll go away. It'll go away on its own. I can manage. I can manage. I can go manage. Meanwhile, this is a cancer lump that's grown, and he ends up dying of cancer a few years later, right? Whereas if he had when the lump was there initially, he went and got it checked out, they probably could have got it removed, and he may be still alive today, right? So anytime, like that's an extreme example, of course, but I'm sure we all can relate to similar stories and circumstances. Anytime you have any health issues that are abnormal, get it checked out if you're in doubt. Like, don't put it off. Like, go to the doctor, get it checked out, at least rule it out that there's, it's not something more serious. And then, hopefully you can get some solutions on what to do to deal with it. But, that's my advice. If you're, again, I don't know exactly what you mean by foggy in the head. If you want to elaborate on this more, feel free to email me and we can chat about it offline. But my advice, get it checked out, right? If in doubt, get it checked out. Good afternoon. This is Daniel saying, good afternoon. I'm Daniel from Spain. The keto diet looks expensive on a long-term basis. Am I wrong? Well, I guess any diet could be considered expensive, but I'm not a fan of keto diets, if you haven't figured that out already. I'm a fan of a well-balanced diet. And when you look at a well-balanced diet, it doesn't have to be expensive, right? Like you can actually eat relatively clean and healthy without going crazy expensive. Now, with any diet, whether it's a keto or a well-balanced or even a junk food diet, you can make it as inexpensive or as expensive as you want. Like we could eat a junk food diet and have it be a cheap one, right? I can go to the grocery store and I can buy no-name frozen pizzas and frozen French fries and, crap like that. And it's relatively inexpensive. Or I can go to restaurants every day and I can make it very expensive. Same with anything. Like you can make a diet as inexpensive or as expensive as you want, depending on how you go about it. So, with a keto diet, I mean, hey, if you're going out and filling up on prime ribs and T-bone steaks as your main meal of choice, and you're getting expensive, expensive cuts of meats and fish and filling up on that, then yeah, it could be certainly expensive. Or you could go a cheaper route and make it less expensive. But again, that applies to all eating plans. I mean, there's ways to go about it to minimize the expense and maximize the bang for your buck, if you will. What else we got there? We got Mark saying, hello, coach. Nice to listen to you in the Q&A. Glad to have you joining in, Mark. Appreciate the support. Neil's joining in saying, thanks, Lee. Fan of the crew cuts, but my wife prefers my hair to be like that of a Korean actor she's a fan of. Can't argue with the wife. I just buzz it off, man. Like, hey, if you enjoy it, that's the way to go. But I guess do what you got to do. We have a case study joining in. He says, I lost some pounds and noticed my pants fit better, but I don't notice a difference in looks. Is there a reason? Yes, that's actually a really good question. Initially, when you lose body fat, you're not going to look any different. You're just going to be a smaller version of your old self because what's happening is you're burning the surface layer of fat, but you've probably still got another layer of fat before you start to get lean and defined. So like if I had an anatomy chart or something, I could really show you this better, but like, let's just say someone's 50 pounds overweight and they lose 10 pounds. they're still 40 pounds overweight. So yeah, they're 10 pounds smaller, but they're still going to look just as soft and smooth as they did when they were 50 pounds overweight as when they're 40 pounds overweight. Like the surface layer of fat is still there. So they don't look any different on the outside. They're just a slightly smaller version of them old selves. Once you get down to burning that last layer of fat, now you've got all the surface layer of fat gone, and now you're into burning the fat that's in between the muscles, the fat that's in between the chest, the fat that's in between the lines of the abdominals, the fat that's going to go from lean to ripped, right? That pesky fat that's in between and all covering all the details. Once you get into burning that, that's when you look like, oh my God, you look so much different, because now you're getting into it's like carving out the details, if you will. You're still in the phase of losing that surface layer of body fat. So it's just a process. I mean, I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic. If you're seeing progress and your clothes are fitting better, that means what you're doing is working. So keep doing it, but you just need to diet longer in order to get down to the phase where now you actually start to see the definition. And to kind of put some numbers and perspective out there, back when I was competing in bodybuilding, and as someone who's been doing this for years, like I've done 17 bodybuilding shows, and it would take me 6 months to go from off season to contest shredded. 6 months of contest prep to go from smooth to shredded. So if you're looking at the average person who's just starting out, a lot of times they'll diet for a month or two and they're like, oh, what am I doing wrong? I'm not there yet. Like, you're brand new, you've never done this before, and you're expecting to go from 0 to hero in 30 days. Like, no, it ain't going to happen. I mean, as an experienced bodybuilder, it took me 6 months. Now, granted, I could have probably shortcut the process a little bit, but I always like to do the slow, steady approach versus the crash diet approach. So, I took 6 months to go from smooth to ripped. If it took me that long, it's probably going to take you at least that long as well, right? So kind of put that in perspective. Give yourself at least 6 months. And if you got a lot of weight to lose, it's probably going to take longer than that. Like if you've got 50 pounds or 100 pounds or like a lot of weight to lose, you're not going to lose it in a few weeks or a few months. Like, it's going to take, a year or more to lose a lot of weight. But if you're like 20, 30 pounds overweight, like, I realistically, I mean, a good guideline to go for, give yourself a week for every pound, right, that you want to lose. At least that long. I mean, sometimes even longer than that. But like at least a minimum if you got 20 pounds to lose, give yourself at least 20 weeks to lose it, right? Like, don't be in a rush. I'd much rather you lose it slow and steady and sustainable versus crash diet and then rebound and gain it all back again. But what you explained there is perfectly normal, right? You will just look like a smaller version of yourself initially. And it's only when you start getting into burning that last layer of body fat, the fat that's in between the muscles and blurring the definition, the last 10 pounds, so to speak, that's when you really start to see the definition show. But in the first phase, you're just going to be a smaller version of your old self and not look any different. All right, guys, I'm going to get ready and include this up soon. I mean, I know there's still a shit ton of questions here, but as always, I go way over my hour. Actually, you know what? There's not that many more questions there. I just scrolling through. I might be able to bang out another more. Let's see. What else? Deepak is asking, how much cardio should we do after weights? That depends. I mean, you may not have to do any. I personally do my cardio separate from my weight training. So I don't do any cardio after my weight training workouts. I do my cardio on a separate day. I do cardio one day and weight training the next. But if you want to combine it together, it depends. Like, what are you training for? Are you just training for general fitness? Are you training to maximize your fat loss? Right? How do you do it? And he's posted another question there right below. He says, how do we add in running with weight training? If you want to cross train and do running and weight training, I would recommend doing exactly what I said before. Run one day, lift weights the next, alternate it day for day. It's what I refer to as my yin and yang training system. Cardio one day, weight training the next. And that's a great way to combine both and still be active every day. And then you're not taking away from any workout. So like when you're doing your running, you're focused on running. When you're doing your weight training, you're focused on your weight training. Right? You're not trying to water it down by doing a weight training workout and then you're too tired to give it a good session when you're running, or you vice versa. It's better to break it up into separate days. That's what I would do. That's what I do. Mark's got a question. I was going to ask this in the private group. Have you ever experienced a sense of satiation when ingesting some BCAAs, EAAs? I ask as once I finish my workout and finish my drink, I'm not hungry for 6 hours. You know what? I can relate to that. When I drink my workout drink, which I usually mix up essential amino acids, it does have a bit of an appetite suppressing effect to it. And I don't know. I mean, there is some obviously there's the amino acids and there's the electrolytes and there's a small amount of calories there, but I find that it does have a bit of an appetite suppressing effect. But there's another thing you got to factor in there as well. The workout itself can actually be appetite suppressing because when you work out, you're elevating, all of the metabolic hormones and you're stimulating endorphins when you're training and you're burning calories, you're burning up stored glycogen, you're burning some body fat. And the workouts itself can actually have a short-term appetite suppressing effect, meaning like right after a hard workout, you're usually not hungry. Like especially if it's a hard workout. If it's an easy workout, like you just go for a walk around the block or you do something just some casual low intensity exercise, it's probably not going to have a big impact on your appetite. But if you do a hard workout where you push yourself, very often you're not hungry right afterwards. And this is kind of universal across the board. Like you see a lot of athletes, if they do a hard sporting event or something like that, like it takes them a while to settle down after that workout before their appetite kicks in. But rest assured, it will kick in, right? It will kick in. It's just going to be several hours later, right? But I mean, in the short term, you're probably not going to feel super hungry and that's okay. Like in those situations, I would probably still recommend like rehydrating yourself. Probably take in if you can't get in some sort of solid food nutrition. This is where some of those post workout drinks and stuff like that can help. Like having a post workout protein shake and maybe something small and easy, like a piece of fruit or something easy to digest. At least you're still replenishing your body, but don't try and slam back a meal if you're not hungry for it. Like kind of listen to your body. But yeah, I've totally experienced that myself, especially when I do hard training sessions. I'm very often not super hungry afterwards. Right? It's a lot of it is the workout itself, and of course, some of it is the drink can have a bit of an appetite suppressing effect too, because you're filling up with water volume, and of course, the drink can satiate some of your sugar craving needs and that too, because it has usually most amino acid drink mixes have a sweet taste to it. What else? Have you ever tried beetroot powder for a pre-workout? Yeah, I've tried that. I've also tried just eating beets as well, and it's not it ain't a make or break. Put it that way. I mean, like there's a lot of health benefits to beets and to beetroot juice and beetroot powder and stuff like that. I mean, this is a great natural form of nitric oxide, help dilate the blood vessels and increase blood flow and all that. But it's not a make or break, right? It's not, like you're not missing out if you don't do it, right? I mean, I don't do it all the time. Like sometimes I'll do it, but it's not a must do, if you will. What else we got there? Can you build muscle by eating vegetables? Yes, you should eat vegetables. Only vegetables? I'm going to be totally honest and transparent here. I'm not a fan of a vegetarian or vegan diet from a bodybuilding point of view. I've tried it and I've never been able to make it work. Right? I've tried going vegan back in the day. I was actually having this conversation today with some of my with some coaching students, and someone he mentioned his wife is a vegetarian, and he was trying it for a while and blah blah blah. So we ended up getting on the whole vegetarian vegan conversation. And back in 2014, my wife and I went vegan for 6 months. She actually stuck with it longer than I did, but I stuck with it for 6 months. And we did it after the whole pro-vegan documentary started flooding Netflix. Now, for those of you who've been following food documentaries on Netflix, you probably remember this. Like there was a whole bunch of them came out. There was Forks Over Knives was one. I can't remember all of them, but there was a whole bunch. The China Study was another one, and there was a whole bunch of other different pro-vegan documentaries started popping up on Netflix. And I got into it. I started watching them and I started, listening to their argument and all that. And when you start to look at the bigger picture, a lot of the studies and stuff that they quote for these pro-vegan documentaries, a lot of it's cherry picked, right? They're comparing a vegan diet to the standard American diet and saying like the standard American diet is the mixed diet. But like there's a big difference between eating processed junk food and versus eating natural unprocessed foods. Like compared to what like a typical bodybuilder would eat, your protein and your veggies and your complex carbohydrates, natural unprocessed foods versus pizza and ice cream and chocolate cake and potato chips and cheeseburgers and like, but a lot of the vegan crowd, they classify that all as one diet, right? They classify if it contains meat, then like meat from a pizza is the same as meat from a piece of wild caught salmon. Like, no, it's not the same, right? So a lot of the studies are kind of cherry picked, and that's common. Like people will manipulate the information to sell their point, if you will. But bottom line, we tried it. We tried it for 6 months, and I got to say, initially, I actually felt pretty good going vegan and all that, and it was like a big detox for the system. The first few days was a big detox to my system, and then first couple weeks actually felt pretty good, felt more energy. But after a while, what was ended up happening is even though I was eating a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of plant-based food, like everything was carbohydrates and fruits and vegetables and healthy fats from like nuts and avocado and stuff like that. I was feeling flat and depleted. Like I couldn't get a pump in the gym. So I'd go through my workouts and it's just like there was nothing there. Like I couldn't get a pump. And I found I was losing weight. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was losing weight, but I wasn't getting any leaner. So it's a sign that I'm losing lean muscle and maintaining my body fat, right? So I mean, it wasn't an ideal situation. And I found that my exercise performance didn't improve. Like I couldn't get a pump in the gym. And I just, even though, okay, I'm eating all this so-called healthy food, I didn't feel good. And then after 6 months, I said, you know, I'm gonna try going vegetarian, right? I'm gonna stretch the boundaries. I'm not gonna be vegan anymore. I'm gonna try vegetarian. So I started adding in some dairy and eggs, and I started adding in some, protein shakes again, and all that kind of stuff. Felt a bit better, right? Strength and muscle fullness started to come back, and felt a bit better. I'd train. I'd actually get a bit of a pump. So, oh, okay, maybe I'll try going pescatarian. So I'll have the eggs and the dairy, and I'll add some fish in there. Felt a bit better again, right? So I was eating plant-based plus some protein. And then finally, I said, you know what? I'm just going to eat like, you know, protein and vegetables, like have a well-balanced diet, focusing on protein and veggies. Felt phenomenal. Like my strength and everything returned. I started to have good workouts again, started to gain quality weight again. And I felt really good. And that's the basis of my eating plan now is protein and veggies, right? Like anybody who's followed me, any of my coaching students, like I always say protein and veggies with every meal. And I learned a lot from that vegan experiment because I really learned the power of vegetables, but I also learned that the benefits of a plant-based diet is not the lack of meat, but the abundance of vegetables. And there's a big difference. Because I mean, you could eat a plant-based diet, aka a vegan diet, and eat like absolute shit. Like I can go and buy potato chips, I can go and get cookies, I can go and get sugar and high fructose corn syrup and hydrogenated vegetable oil and all this kind of junk, and I can slam back all that. I can eat, sugary cereal like Fruit Loops and Captain Crunch and all this kind of crap and load it up with soy milk and have an absolute heart attack diet from plant-based. So just because there's a lack of meat doesn't equal health, right? In fact, there's a lot of health benefits to good quality animal proteins. Like there's a lot of nutrients, a lot of essential amino acids, a lot of vitamins and minerals, a lot of essential fatty acids. There's a lot of goodness there. So that's where I come up with the well-balanced approach, right? And it's not just something that I plucked from air or decided was healthy from, on a whim. It was something through years of trial and error. Because I've tried going keto back in the day, the whole low carb stuff. I tried going the whole low fat back in the 80s when that was popular. And then when the whole pro vegan stuff came about, I tried going like low protein and going vegan. And then it's like through all the years of trial and error and trying all these different fad diets where you're cutting out food groups and all this kind of stuff, I said, you know what? A well-balanced diet. 30 your calories from protein, 30 your calories from carbohydrates, 30 your calories from healthy fats. Like have a well-balanced, healthy eating. Holy shit, it works. Like who would have thought well-balanced actually works? right? It's not all the crap stuff where you're throwing out the, cutting out food groups and trying to have these extreme stuff. Just give me a second, guys. We've got we got a scammer on board here. Someone's putting in these bullshit dating sites in our chat. So let me just report and scam, delete this. Unwanted pornography, sexually explicit material report to YouTube. You can go and F off. I have zero tolerance for shit like that. All right. I don't get it very often, but I do get a little bit of crap from every now and then. And when I do, it's out the door. All right. Sorry for those of you who've seen that. Not the way we want to end our video chat, but hopefully they're gone. All right. Anyway, gentlemen, I got to clue this up. I know we went longer than an hour. I always do. I say I'm going to do this for an hour and then I'm going for an hour and a half. Anyway, hopefully you enjoy the video chats. Hopefully you got some value from it. And I'll have the replay of this posted up over the weekend. And of course, if you would like some help, if you got any questions related to anything we discussed today, or if you would like some help with a personalized fitness and nutrition program, feel free to reach out to me. Again, I have my contact information down in the description below this video. So it's leeh@leehayward.com. That's my email address if you want to email me. Or you can reach out to me over on Facebook. Just search for Lee Hayward over there. You'll find me on Facebook and friend me up and we can have a chat through Facebook Messenger. And of course, if you need some help, then we can, we can even book in for a strategy call, and I have a link to all that information down in the description below. All right. So in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care. Over and out.